Ellie wiped the sweat from his brow as he crouched beside the hull of the small transport ship. Sparks from his welding tool fell like tiny fireflies onto the dark metal floor of the asteroid outpost, lighting the dim space with brief flashes. The station was quiet, empty most of the time except for passing traders who came for repairs. And Eli had grown used to this solitude. He liked it. It let him focus. Machines didn't ask questions. They didn't judge. They only needed care. And he could give that. Today, however, the quiet was different. Eli had noticed a shimmer outside the main docking bay. A light unlike anything he had ever seen. He paused, hand frozen over the control panel. Through the thick viewport he saw a ship that did not belong to the usual fleet of cargo transports or mining crafts. Its surface was smooth and silver, almost alive, reflecting the harsh light of the asteroid field around it. It hovered without sound, as if it were floating on the very air itself. Eli's curiosity was immediate. He had never seen technology like this, not in his manuals, not in the older ships he repaired for years. He set down his tools carefully and watched. A hatch opened silently, sliding away with perfect grace. A figure stepped out, tall and elegant. Eli blinked. She moved with a calm confidence, her presence somehow commanding yet serene. The princess, though Eli did not know her yet, observed him quietly. Her eyes were large, not quite human, but her gaze held a warmth that was unusual for her kind. She was meant to make decisions quickly, and one of the most important decisions she would ever make in her life was happening now. Her people had a tradition. A lifemate was not chosen lightly. They watched, they observed, they learned, and sometimes, in the silence of an ordinary moment, they knew. Eli, unaware of the weight of her presence, returned to his work. He crouched by her ship, lifting a panel and inspecting the internal circuits. The metal was strange to him, not alien in a dangerous sense, but advanced in a way that made every wire, every connector feel like a puzzle. He adjusted something here, tested something there, and muttered to himself, "Huh. A clever design. Really clever." His voice echoed softly in the docking bay. The princess watched his fingers, noting the careful way he handled delicate components. He did not rush, he did not panic. Even when a small spark popped from one of the circuits, he merely stepped back, wiped his hands, and considered the problem before moving again. That kind of calm precision was rare, even among humans. She stepped closer, her movements silent. The floor of the docking bay was cold, but she made no sound. Eli noticed a reflection in the polished metal of the ship, the shape of a tall figure observing him. He paused, glanced up, and for a moment their eyes met. He nodded politely, unsure of what else to do. She returned the nod with a quiet dignity, then stepped back, letting him continue. Hours passed. The asteroid's sun shifted through the viewports, casting long shadows across the room. Eli worked steadily, his hands never trembling. He cleaned circuits, replaced components, and adjusted the ship's energy regulators. Each movement was careful, precise, as if he were performing a quiet ritual. The princess lingered nearby, walking slowly around the perimeter, her eyes never leaving him. She did not speak. Words were not needed. Observation alone was enough. As the afternoon passed into evening, Eli discovered an unusual panel deep in the ship's core. It was clearly important and clearly delicate. He paused, examining the controls, feeling the hum of energy running through it. "This is different," he murmured. "Never seen a system like this before." His brow furrowed as he tried to understand it. The princess leaned slightly closer, curious, her expression unreadable, though her eyes were soft. Eli did not notice the way she studied the lines of his face, the small quirks of his expression that revealed his thought process. He tried one adjustment, then another, careful not to trigger any alarms. The lights on the panel blinked, and a low hum of energy spread through the room. He exhaled slowly. There
There it is.
His hands worked faster now, not recklessly, but with growing confidence. She stepped slightly closer, but never intruded, letting him solve the problem on his own. Time seemed to stretch. The station's lighting dimmed as the asteroid's shadow moved across the surface, but Eli remained absorbed. His mind was focused entirely on the machine in front of him, analyzing, correcting, improving. The princess shifted her stance, noticing the subtle patience, the careful thought, and the quiet determination. Humans often acted in noise and haste, but this won. He moved in silence, yet every movement mattered. She felt a rare sense of calm, unusual for her kind when observing someone new. Finally, Eli straightened. He wiped his hands again and took a step back to examine his work. The ship hummed softly, the energy flowing correctly through circuits that had previously been dormant. He smiled to himself. Good as new, I think. He wasn't sure if she would even notice, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. The princess took a step forward, a rare gesture. She spoke, her voice melodic, though quiet enough not to startle him. Your work, it is unlike anything I have seen. You do not hurry. You do not falter. Eli turned sharply, startled. He had not expected anyone to speak.
Oh, thank you.
Just doing my job, I guess. He felt a sudden warmth, unfamiliar, in the presence of an alien. He returned to the control panel, pretending to check something else, but he could not hide the slight grin. She watched him carefully, studying more than his hands or skill. She studied his mind, the way he approached problems, the way he respected the machine in front of him. You value what you touch, she said softly. You do not destroy, you improve. Ellie blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. I guess that's true. He laughed softly, scratching the back of his neck, not realizing how human his gestures appeared, how comforting and sincere. For hours more they remained like this, him working, her observing. Sometimes she would point out a small detail, suggesting a minor adjustment, and he would nod politely, incorporating it into his solution. Each suggestion came from her advanced understanding, but he treated it as friendly advice, never realizing the significance. The quiet connection grew, an invisible bond forming through gestures, through thought, through shared focus on the task at hand. Night fell across the asteroid outpost. The stars reflected off the ship's smooth surface, tiny pinpricks of light shimmering like distant eyes. All right, that should do it, he said quietly. He wiped his hands again and admired the machine. It looked whole, perfect, in a way that made him proud. The princess stepped forward, her expression unreadable, but her eyes holding a glimmer of something unusual, approval, curiosity, perhaps even admiration. She walked slowly toward the airlock, turning to him once. You have a rare skill, human, and a rare patience. These qualities, they are more than useful. They are remarkable. Eli stared, trying to find words, but none came.
Thank you.
Really, I
appreciate that. He felt awkward, but warm inside, unaware of the greater significance of her words.
As she moved into her ship, Ellie watched quietly. The hatch closed with a soft hiss. The ship's hum grew steady, smooth, and finally it lifted into the asteroid sky. He exhaled, a mix of relief and fascination running through him. He had no idea that in his quiet work, in the patient adjustments, in the thoughtful handling of her ship, he had unknowingly impressed someone of great importance. The princess gazed back at him through the viewport, her eyes holding a silent acknowledgement. Eli, focused on returning his tools to the workbench, did not notice. She was choosing, in her own silent way, observing not just skill, but heart, mind, and spirit. And Eli, in his simple, quiet diligence, had begun to show her all the qualities that would one day matter the most. As the ship disappeared into the darkness, Eli returned to his station. He looked at the empty space where it had been, and a strange feeling settled over him. A sense of having been part of something larger, though he could not yet understand it. He cleaned his tools carefully, thinking about circuits and energy flows. Yet a thought lingered at the edge of his mind, a whisper of curiosity about the strange, silent figure who had watched him work so intently. He did not know it yet, but this encounter had started something neither he nor the princess could have predicted. In the quiet of the asteroid outpost, human skill met alien observation, and a connection, subtle and unspoken, began to form. Eli, the quiet engineer, had fixed a ship in silence, and unknowingly had started to capture the attention of someone who would weigh his worth in ways he could never imagine. The next day, Eli arrived at the asteroid outpost early. As usual, the station was quiet, just the way he liked it. The soft hum of life support and the distant buzz of passing ships filled the air. Eli had been thinking about the strange ship from the day before. He could not stop replaying the memory of the tall, elegant figure who had observed him silently. He shook his head and laughed softly to himself. "Get a grip, Eli!" It was just another customer, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. There was something unusual about her, something beyond the shine of her ship or the smoothness of her movements. He made his way to the docking bay, checking the tools and components on his bench. His hands were steady, but his mind wandered back to her gaze, the way she had watched him work with such quiet attention. He had been complimented by many in the past, but this felt different. It was subtle, yet somehow powerful. There was no hurry in her observation, no demand, just an awareness that made him feel small and important at the same time. As he arranged his tools, he heard a soft hum outside. He glanced up and froze. The ship had returned. Its silver surface shimmered in the asteroid sunlight, moving gracefully through the docking bay. The hatch opened once more, and she stepped out, her expression calm, almost curious. Eli straightened instinctively, unsure of how to greet her this time.
Welcome back, he said, scratching the back of his neck nervously.
She nodded slightly, acknowledging him without a word. Eli felt a strange warmth in his chest, a flutter he could not quite explain. He had worked with many aliens before, but none had ever made him feel this way. Watched not as a worker, but as someone whose mind and skill were being quietly measured. She walked past him, observing the station and its machinery. Her movements were careful, graceful, as if she belonged to the air itself. Eli cleared his throat and returned to his bench.
So, anything wrong with the ship?
Or are we just checking systems today? He tried to sound casual, but his voice betrayed a hint of nervous excitement. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes following his movements as he prepared diagnostic tools. Eli felt like every action mattered, and perhaps it did. The princess moved closer, looking at the ship's interior. She touched the surface lightly, as if feeling the flow of energy beneath the metal. Eli noticed. Curious, but he did not comment. He focused on his work, running tests, checking circuits, and observing energy patterns. He spoke quietly to himself, muttering numbers and ideas. She listened, her eyes tracing his hands, noting the rhythm of his movements. There was a harmony between them, a silent understanding that required no words. Hours passed. Eli worked meticulously, adjusting power flows, tightening connections, and recalibrating the ship's systems. The princess stayed nearby, sometimes stepping back to watch from a distance, sometimes leaning closer to examine his adjustments. She never interfered, only observed. Every so often she would tilt her head or nod slightly, approving his careful choices. Eli did not notice these small gestures, but they mattered more than he could have known. At one point, Eli paused, looking at a control panel that seemed unusually complex. He frowned. This isn't like anything I've seen before. It's clever, but tricky. He tapped a few buttons, tested a few circuits, and stepped back. The princess watched his thought process, noting the way he approached problems. He did not panic or rush. He considered every angle, every possibility, and then acted with precision. She smiled slightly, a rare expression for her kind. Time passed quickly, though neither of them noticed. The asteroid sun shifted across the horizon, painting long shadows across the docking bay. Eli worked with a quiet determination, and she watched with patient curiosity. Every movement, every decision, every careful adjustment spoke of intelligence, patience, and respect. She began to feel a connection forming, not just to his skill, but to his mind, his character, his very way of being. As the day wore on, a small problem appeared in the ship's energy flow, a minor imbalance, but enough to affect performance. Eli noticed immediately, frowning as he studied the readings. He adjusted the regulators, testing, retesting, and slowly correcting the flow. The princess leaned closer this time. Her interest piqued. She did not touch the controls but observed closely, noting his logic and patience. Eli spoke softly to himself, reasoning through the problem step by step.
"You handle things differently," she said quietly, almost as if thinking aloud. Eli jumped slightly, startled by her voice.
Oh! Yeah, I guess I do.
I like to, think before acting.
He smiled awkwardly. She nodded, acknowledging his response without judgment.
Her gaze was steady, analyzing, but warm. She had not expected to find someone like this. A human who did not just repair machines, but respected them, understood them, and approached them with care. Eli worked for hours, correcting the imbalance, improving the flow, and fine-tuning the ship's systems. The princess remained nearby, moving silently, her attention never wavering. She began to recognize qualities she valued deeply: patience, intelligence, creativity, and an unspoken respect for life and work. Eli, oblivious to her evaluation, continued to work as if nothing extraordinary was happening. Finally, Eli leaned back and surveyed the ship. That should do it. "Everything looks good now," he said softly. He wiped his hands and smiled, satisfied. The princess stepped closer, examining the panels and systems. She nodded, a subtle but meaningful gesture. "Your skill, your care, it is unusual among humans," she said. Eli blinked, unsure what to say. Thanks, I just try my best." His humility only made her regard him more favorably. They spent the rest of the day together in a quiet rhythm. Ellie repaired minor components, tested systems, and shared occasional words of explanation. She listened and asked questions, not out of necessity, but out of curiosity. Each interaction built a silent understanding between them. The princess had begun to sense something unique about him, something rare and valuable. Eli remained unaware of the weight of her observation, but he felt a subtle warmth in her presence, a sense of respect and acknowledgement that touched him more than he realized. Evening approached, and the asteroid's shadow stretched across the station. The princess moved to the viewport, gazing out at the distant stars. Eli noticed her stance, the elegance in her posture, but he did not comment. He cleaned his tools quietly, organizing the workbench with methodical care. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with mutual awareness rather than awkwardness. She spoke again, softly. "You do not hurry. You do not falter. You think, and you act. It is admirable." Eli looked up, caught off guard. Well, I like to get things right. "That's all," he said, smiling slightly. Her eyes lingered on him, thoughtful, almost approving. She had seen many beings in her life, but few with such steady patience and quiet confidence. The asteroid night fell completely, and the station lights glowed softly, illuminating the metallic surfaces of the docking bay. Eli finished the day's work and stepped back from the ship, surveying it one last time. The princess moved closer, her gaze examining the ship and him together. "You value what you touch," she said. "You do not destroy. You improve. That is rare." Eli's heart beat a little faster. He nodded, unsure how to respond. Thanks. I appreciate that." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the soft hum of the ship and the distant stars beyond the viewport. A connection had formed, subtle and unspoken, built on patience, skill, and quiet respect. Eli did not yet know the significance of her presence, nor did he understand the weight of her observation. But the princess had begun to see in him qualities that mattered deeply to her people. Qualities of mind, heart, and spirit that could shape the choice of a life mate. Finally, she stepped back, her movements deliberate, graceful. "Tomorrow we continue," she said softly. Eli nodded, smiling, though he did not fully understand why she was staying or what she wanted. He felt a strange sense of anticipation, a curiosity about the silent figure who had captured his attention without a word. As she moved toward the ship, Eli returned to his tools, arranging them carefully, his mind buzzing with quiet excitement. He had repaired the ship, he had solved its problems, and yet the encounter had left him with something far more intriguing than circuits or energy flows. He had met someone extraordinary, someone who saw more than his skill, who observed the quiet actions that spoke of character and care. The princess lingered at the viewport, watching him as he worked, her eyes reflecting the faint light of the asteroid sky. She knew that in this simple human, in his patience, ingenuity, and respect, she had glimpsed something rare. Eli, still unaware of the silent evaluation, continued to work methodically, each action building a bridge between their worlds. By the end of the day, the station was quiet again, filled with the soft hum of machinery and the distant twinkle of stars. Eli paused, stretching his arms, glancing toward the silver ship. The princess remained inside it, observing him silently. And for the first time, he felt the subtle weight of someone's gaze, not judging, not demanding, but curious, thoughtful, and almost expectant. And in that quiet moment, without a word, a bond began to deepen, a bond built on patience, skill, and the quiet understanding that some connections were forged, not in grand gestures, but in careful observation, gentle respect, and shared focus. Eli did not know it yet, but the princess had begun to consider him in ways that would shape both of their futures, and neither of them would ever be the same again. The next morning, the asteroid outpost glowed softly in the pale light of the distant sun. Eli arrived early, as always, carrying his toolkit and a small notebook filled with sketches and calculations. He enjoyed the quiet of the station before work began, the faint hum of life support systems, and the occasional clink of metal under his hands. Today felt different, though. His mind kept drifting back to the silver ship and the quiet, dignified presence of the alien who had watched him work so carefully. He shook his head and smiled faintly. "It's just work," he muttered. "Focus, Eli! Focus on the job!" He entered the docking bay and immediately noticed the ship hovering silently, its polished surface reflecting the asteroid's sunlight. The hatch opened as she stepped out, her movements graceful and deliberate. Eli paused, unsure what to say. "Good morning," he said softly, feeling a warmth rise in his chest. She inclined her head slightly, acknowledging him without a word. Her gaze swept the station, the ship, and finally returned to him, lingering in a way that made him feel observed yet understood. Today, Eli's task was more complicated. The ship had an energy regulator that had started acting unpredictably. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to affect the ship's performance. Eli examined the panel carefully, running diagnostics and checking readings. He muttered softly as he worked, adjusting wires, recalibrating sensors, and tracing circuits. The princess stayed close, silent, but attentive, watching the patterns of his work. She did not interfere, only observed, noting the precision and patience in each of his movements. Hours passed as Eli worked on the delicate system. The energy regulator was unlike anything he had encountered before. Its design was elegant but complex, a blend of alien technology and advanced logic. He studied it carefully, testing theories, adjusting small components, and observing the results. She moved closer, fascinated by the way he approached the problem. His focus was unwavering, yet he never lost sight of care. He handled the components gently, as if they were living things rather than pieces of metal and energy. At one point, the system sparked unexpectedly, a brief flash that made Eli jump slightly. "Whoa!" he exclaimed softly. He stepped back, taking a deep breath. The princess's eyes followed him, calm and observant. She noticed how he did not panic, how he did not rush to fix the problem without thinking. Instead, he analyzed the situation, considered the possibilities, and then moved forward, carefully. Her expression softened. This calm, thoughtful approach was rare among humans. Eli adjusted the regulators again, testing the flow of energy through the system. He jotted notes in his notebook, sketching connections and writing numbers. The princess leaned slightly closer, curious about his methods. "You approach problems in a way I did not expect," she said softly. Eli looked up, startled.
"Oh, I just try to figure things out step by step."
"Makes more sense that way." She inclined her head, as if acknowledging his answer, though her eyes were still fixed on his work. Hours stretched into afternoon. Eli was absorbed in his work, moving between panels, tools, and the ship's core systems. The princess followed silently, studying his techniques, noting the careful adjustments he made. She could see the rhythm in his movements, the intelligence in his decisions, and the patience in his hands. It fascinated her how a human could combine curiosity, skill, and respect into such quiet mastery. She began to feel an unusual sense of admiration, not for the ship, but for him. Suddenly, a problem arose that was more serious than anything Eli had faced before. A critical connection in the energy regulator was unstable, and if left unchecked, it could shut down the system entirely. Eli's eyes widened as he examined the readings. This is tricky," he muttered. He studied the components, trying to understand the alien logic and how it interacted with human adjustments. The princess observed closely, her expression thoughtful, but she did not intervene. She wanted to see how he handled difficulty, how he thought under pressure. Eli adjusted a small wire, then tested the regulator. The readings shifted slightly, but not enough. He frowned, trying another approach, but it still did not stabilize. He stepped back, taking a deep breath, and studied the system carefully. "Okay." "Patience," he whispered to himself. The princess noticed the quiet determination in his voice, the way he did not give up, and she felt a subtle admiration grow. He tried again, moving carefully, testing, adjusting, and analyzing. Each attempt brought him closer to a solution. The princess moved a little closer, intrigued by the way he combined logic, creativity, and patience. She had seen humans act hastily, make mistakes, or panic under pressure. But this human, he approached challenges like a dance, moving carefully, observing, and adapting. Hours passed, and the asteroid sun shifted toward the horizon. Eli wiped sweat from his brow, feeling the weight of concentration. The regulator sparked again briefly, but this time, he noticed the pattern. Got it," he whispered. He adjusted a series of tiny components, tested the energy flow, and finally, the system stabilized. The hum of energy in the ship smoothed, steady and even. He leaned back, exhausted but satisfied.
There, stable now. Should hold perfectly.
The princess stepped closer, her expression calm but her eyes reflecting a soft approval. You remained calm.
You
Adapted? You
Succeeded, she said softly. Eli looked up, blinking, unsure how to respond.
Thanks. I guess. It worked out. He smiled faintly, feeling proud but humble. She nodded once, acknowledging him, then stepped back, allowing him to observe his work. They spent the next hour checking other minor systems together. Eli tested connections, observed readings, and adjusted panels. The princess asked a few questions, not out of necessity, but from curiosity. Each question allowed Eli to explain his thought process, his reasoning, and his choices. She listened intently, noting how he valued understanding over speed, care over recklessness. She began to see a human whose mind and spirit were rare, even extraordinary. As the asteroid night fell, Eli took a break, leaning against the docking bay wall. Wow! Today was intense, he said softly, wiping his hands. The princess moved to the viewport, gazing at the stars. She did not speak immediately, but her eyes lingered on him. You possess qualities I have seldom seen in humans. Patience, respect, intelligence, care, she said quietly. Eli blinked, unsure what to say. Well, I just try to do my best. That's all. His humility only made her regard him more favorably. She stepped closer, observing him with quiet attention. Your work, your approach, it is remarkable. Not just skill, but character, she said softly. Eli felt a warmth rise in his chest, a sense of connection he had not experienced before. He looked at her, smiling faintly. Thanks. That means a lot, really. The evening passed in quiet companionship. Eli finished his notes, cleaned his tools, and organized the docking bay. The princess moved among the ship and station, her presence calm and unobtrusive. They did not need to speak much. Their mutual understanding had grown through observation, shared effort, and subtle communication. Each small gesture, each careful action had deepened the bond between them. Finally, the princess approached Eli, her expression unreadable yet thoughtful. Tomorrow we will continue, she said softly. Eli nodded, smiling, feeling a sense of anticipation he could not explain. He had come to the outpost for work, but now it felt like something more, something important, quiet and meaningful. As the night settled over the asteroid, the station bathed in soft light. Eli prepared for the next day. He cleaned his tools carefully, arranged his notes, and reflected on the day's events. The challenge of the energy regulator had been difficult, yet he had solved it. And more than that, he had discovered a subtle connection with someone extraordinary, a being who observed, respected, and appreciated his mind, patience, and care. The princess remained in her ship, watching him quietly through the viewport. She felt a growing certainty that this human possessed qualities beyond skill, qualities that could matter deeply in her life, qualities that were rare and valuable. She did not rush. She did not interfere. She simply observed, allowing him to reveal himself through actions and choices, as tradition dictated.
Eli, unaware of the significance of her observation, felt only a quiet satisfaction in his work and a strange, comforting awareness of her presence.
Their bond had deepened, not through words or gestures, but through shared effort, patience, and mutual respect. And as the stars twinkled silently beyond the viewport, neither of them could yet foresee how much this quiet connection would shape the days to come. In the silent hum of the asteroid outpost, Human skill and alien observation met. In quiet diligence and careful attention, a subtle bond had formed, one that would guide them through challenges, understanding, and the gentle growth of trust and admiration. And Eli, focused on his work yet sensing something extraordinary, had begun to glimpse that his life was quietly intertwining with someone remarkable in ways he could not yet fully understand. The next morning, the asteroid outpost was quiet, bathed in the pale glow of the distant sun. Eli arrived with his usual energy, carrying his tools and notes, though he could not shake the sense that today felt different. Something in the air was subtle but noticeable, a quiet tension that made him focus even more than usual. He looked around the docking bay, noting the smooth surface of the silver ship hovering silently. Its presence felt heavier than before, as if it held more than just mechanical importance. The hatch opened, and she stepped out. Her posture was calm and confident, yet there was a faint warmth in her eyes that made Eli pause. He greeted her automatically. "Good morning," but his voice felt small in the presence of her quiet attention. She inclined her head slightly, acknowledging him without a word, and moved closer to the ship, her gaze scanning its panels. Today, Eli noticed, she watched him with more focus than before, almost as if she were measuring something deeper than skill. Eli returned to work, adjusting minor components, checking energy flows, and reviewing his notes from the previous days. He spoke quietly to himself, muttering calculations and observations. The princess leaned in, observing each motion with a calm intensity. She was watching more than his hands now. She was watching his mind, the way he approached challenges, the care he gave to each action, and the respect he showed for the ship. She was looking for something rare, and in Eli, she found it. As the hours passed, a new complication arose. A part of the ship's navigation system began showing irregular readings. Eli frowned, kneeling to examine the delicate panels. That's not right," he muttered, tapping a few controls and studying the data. The system was unlike any human technology he had seen, yet he approached it with patience and thoughtfulness. The princess stepped closer, silently observing how he analyzed the problem. Eli adjusted a few connections, tested the system, and observed the readings again. The problem persisted, small but significant. He leaned back, taking a deep breath. "All right, slow and steady," he said softly to himself. "Think, understand, then act." The princess noticed the deliberate calm in his words, the way he did not panic despite the unknown elements. She felt a quiet admiration grow within her. This human approached challenges with logic, respect, and care, a combination that was rare, even among her own kind. He tried a different method, rerouting minor circuits and recalibrating the energy sensors. The system responded, but only partially. Eli studied the results, tracing patterns in the data, making small adjustments. The princess moved slightly closer, fascinated by his methodical approach. Every movement he made reflected thought, patience, and skill. She could sense a strength in him, quiet and unassuming, yet powerful in its reliability. Hours turned into the asteroid afternoon. Eli continued his careful adjustments, testing each change and recording the results. The princess followed silently, occasionally pointing out a small observation or asking a question, not to correct him, but to understand his process. Eli explained his reasoning simply, sharing how he interpreted the system's behavior and what each adjustment meant. She listened attentively, appreciating not just his skill, but his ability to communicate complex ideas clearly and calmly. Finally, Eli discovered a solution. A combination of careful recalibration and subtle adjustment corrected the navigation irregularities. The system hummed smoothly, energy flows balanced perfectly, and the ship's diagnostics showed all systems functioning optimally. He exhaled, a mixture of relief and satisfaction spreading through him. "All right," Done. Everything seems stable now, he said softly, stepping back. The princess approached him, her gaze thoughtful. You remained calm. Understood. You corrected the problem, she said quietly, her voice melodic and gentle. Eli blinked, unsure how to respond. Well, I just tried to figure it out. Step by step, he said, smiling faintly. Her eyes softened, reflecting approval and something deeper, something that Eli could not yet understand. She gestured toward the viewport, where the stars beyond the asteroid glimmered faintly. I have been observing you for several days, she said. Not only your skill, but your mind, your patience, your care. These qualities, they are rare. Among humans, I have seldom seen them. Among all beings, I have seldom seen them at all. Eli's heart skipped a beat. He looked at her, speechless, trying to understand the meaning behind her words. You repaired my ship, yes, she continued. But more than that, you have shown qualities that matter in ways beyond this work. You possess the patience, understanding, and respect that my people value in a lifemate. I have been choosing, observing, and now I believe I have found what I seek. Eli's eyes widened, his mind struggling to process her words. Lifemate? You mean me? He felt a rush of disbelief, surprise, and something warm that he could not name. She nodded gently.
Yes, in my culture, a lifemate is chosen not for appearance or rank, but for mind, spirit, and character.
You have proven yourself without even knowing. You acted with care, with patience, with understanding. You have earned my respect and my choice. Eli felt his chest tighten. He had fixed her ship in silence, unaware that his quiet work was being weighed in ways far beyond mechanics. He swallowed hard, words catching in his throat. I don't know what to say, he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. She smiled softly, her presence calm and reassuring.
No words are necessary, she said. What matters is what you have shown, your actions, your choices, your character.
That is enough. Eli nodded slowly, feeling a warmth spread through him.
He had never imagined that simple diligence, patience, and care could mean so much to someone, much less to someone extraordinary. The princess stepped closer, her gaze gentle but firm. You have done more than repair my ship. You have revealed yourself.
And I wish to know more, to learn, to share, to grow together, if you will allow it.
Eli felt a surge of emotions, honor, surprise, warmth, and a quiet joy. He swallowed and nodded. I would like that, he said, his voice steadying. I would like that very much. They spent the rest of the day together, not working, but exploring the small station and the ship. The princess asked questions about human life, curiosity sparkling in her eyes.
Eli shared stories of his childhood, his work, and the simple joys of creating and repairing.
She listened, fascinated by the human perspective, the creativity, and the care he took in everything he did. Every word, every gesture, every smile built a connection that was deeper than either of them could have imagined. As night fell across the asteroid, the stars glimmered through the viewport. The princess stood beside Eli, their quiet presence together, filling the docking bay. She spoke softly. You have shown me that even in silence, actions can speak more than words. That care, patience, and understanding, these are qualities that endure. Eli nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary, but in her eyes, he saw the value of simple human qualities, the same qualities that had always guided him in his work, in his life. The ship's lights reflected softly on the metallic floor, casting long shadows that moved gently with the quiet hum of the systems. Eli and the princess stood together, a sense of trust, respect, and connection growing silently between them. No grand gestures, no words of grandeur, just understanding, admiration, and the quiet power of shared experience. "I never expected this," Ellie said softly.
I mean, fixing a ship? Never thought it would
lead to something like this. She smiled, the curve of her lips gentle and kind. Sometimes, the quietest actions reveal the greatest truths. You have shown me who you are, and that is more than enough. The stars outside sparkled faintly, distant and beautiful. Eli looked at her, realizing that, in the silence of work, in the patient care of a ship, he had created a bridge between their worlds. She, in turn, had observed and recognized the value of mind, spirit, and heart. And now, together, they were stepping into something entirely new, a connection born of respect, patience, and the quiet strength of understanding. As the night deepened, they remained together in the docking bay, their presence comfortable and reassuring. Eli felt a sense of purpose and warmth he had never known. The princess felt a sense of certainty, rare and profound. In each other they had found qualities that transcended culture, species, and expectation. They had found trust, admiration, and the quiet promise of companionship. Finally, as the asteroid's shadow stretched across the station, Eli turned to her and smiled. I think this is just the beginning, he said softly. She returned the smile, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. Yes, she said, the beginning of something meaningful. In the quiet of the outpost, amidst the soft hum of machinery and the distant glimmer of stars, human skill and alien observation had led to something unexpected and extraordinary. A bond had formed, not through force, not through words, but through patience, care, and the quiet understanding of another being. Eli had fixed a ship in silence, and in doing so, he had revealed the qualities that mattered most, earning not only respect, but connection, trust, and the rare possibility of a shared future. And in that quiet moment, under the endless stars, they both understood that the journey ahead would be shared not as engineer and passenger, not as alien and human, but as companions bound by admiration, understanding, and the unspoken promise of loyalty and care. The ship stood ready. The station hummed softly, and a new chapter of life began, quiet yet full of possibilities, for Eli and the princess, who had chosen him as her life mate.